guys, welcome back to Jessin Reads Romance. I'm Jessin, and today I'm going to be wrapping up the second week in May, and I have a lot of books to go through. So let's get it started. The first book that I read was The Game Plan by Kristen Callahan. These are rereads for me, but like I mentioned in my previous wrap-ups when I did books 1 and 2 of the series, I remember nothing about them. And in this particular romance, the only thing that I remembered about the entire series, the Game On series by Kristen Callahan, was that there was a virgin hero, and that's Dex, and this is his story. So Fiona, the heroine, is the little sister of Ivy, and she was the heroine of book 2, so we do get a glimpse of her in previous books, and she's kind of had she was kind of a wild child. She rebelled against her dad. She's been known to enjoy a lot of men, but whenever she decides to go visit her sister, because now that Ivy and Gray are together and they just had a new baby, she wants to go visit. And so she goes to California, and Dex is staying there too, because Dex is still friends with Gray, even though they're playing for different teams in the NFL at this point. So during this week-long stay, I believe it's a week, they connect and they decide that they're going to try for a relationship. But there's a lot of drama that goes on with this book, a lot of drama to do with his virginity and also her job. She works in interior design, and honestly, none of it really worked for me. It just did not satisfy me, which is so sad because I think that the characters are great. Like, I liked Fiona as a character and I liked Dex as a character, but the stuff that happens to them, like the trauma that he's experienced, which goes hand in hand with the reason why he's decided to remain a virgin, because he experienced a past trauma with like spring break, and it was horrible to read about it, and I don't blame him for being traumatized and not wanting to have sex after that. And then just stuff that they face together once like the world knows that they're dating. It's just a lot, and it just was not an enjoyable read for me. So I gave this book 3 stars, but I still like the characters, but the story was just not for me, man. It was just not for me. Next, I did a historical romance reading vlog recently, and I read Devil in Disguise. So this was one of my most anticipated books of this year. Lisa Kleypas is one of my favorite authors of all time, like not just in historical, just in general. She's one of my favorite authors of all time. And I'm very proud to say, I'm very pleased to say that this was a 5+ star read. I don't have 6-star ratings like Jen does, but if I did, it would be that. I was beyond satisfied, and like I said in my reading vlog, I didn't want to give out too much information because there is, a couple months until it comes out, but it was incredibly romantic. This couple gave me all of the feels. I love them so much, and we get so many scenes of the characters from the Wallflower series as parents. Merritt is the daughter of Westcliff and Lillian, and so Marcus and Lillian are in there a lot. We get a glimpse of her brother. I hope that he gets a book in this series. So this is still technically the Ravenel series. I honestly don't know why it's not a spinoff for like a new series, like for all the Wallflower children. I don't understand why this is still in the Ravenel series. But Merritt is like one of my new favorite heroines that Lisa Kleypas has written. Kier is one of my new favorite heroes that Lisa Kleypas has ever written. I can't wait to talk about this book in more detail. I will be rereading it closer to release date because we're going to be doing a podcast episode on it. Juliet has also already read the book, so we'll both be rereading, and I have so many highlights. It's just good. Okay, one more thing before I move on. But, there's camps for Lisa Kleypas fans. The camp that's firmly behind Derek Craven and his romantic keeping of the glasses gesture. And then there's me in the St. Vincent camp, because St. Vincent is the best. He's the best. I'm sorry. He is the best. But there's something very romantic that happens in this book, and I'm just like, this is the best. It tops the Derek Craven keeping the glasses thing. I'm not afraid to say it. Moving on, next I read This Earl of Mine by Kate Bateman. This is the first time that I've ever read a Kate Bateman before, and I liked the characters, but I felt like the plot was a little bit slow moving. Now, this plot is similar to Shanna by Kathleen Woodiwiss, which I recently read for the Historical Hellions book club, and I like the premise of her getting married to somebody in Newgate prison, expecting him to die because she wants to be protected from all the fortune hunters since she has inherited her father's shipping company. No man wants to sign her contract that they don't get to control her funds, and she'll handle whatever stipend that he needs to be getting, his little allowance. So she decides to avoid her cousin Jonas, one of them, he's a piece of crap. To avoid him in his advances that she needs to get married to somebody who will not be interfering in her life and is in Newgate prison. Well, what she doesn't know is that the person that she marries, named Ben Wild, is actually undercover. He's working for Bow Street, and he is trying to uncover this plot to rescue Napoleon. And that's the part that I kind of struggled with. I wasn't really interested, and I also felt like the romance took too long to develop. Because of their marriage in the first chapter, I expected a little bit more, and I felt like it was slow in a lot of places, and I was bored in a lot of places, but it wasn't bad. It just wasn't my favorite. So I'm giving this book like 3.25 stars. I know I'm being picky, and the rating is definitely influenced by the other books that I read for this reading vlog. So next on my list, I read What a Difference a Duke Makes by Lenora Bell. This is a Jane Eyre retelling. I really like the elements of like Jane Eyre that are included. Edgar Rochester, he has twins, a boy and a girl, Adele and Michelle. They're scaring away all of their governesses, and she comes from a small town, and the only reason why she's in London is because there was a position open. She was a little late because she got robbed as soon as she hit London. And the lady in charge of all like the training of the governesses, she's awful. She's a little bit witchy. Says like, oops, sorry, I gave your position away. Mari overhears this governess returning from this duke's household saying, I'm not going back, and we should not send a replacement because this is like 4 of us have gone over there and the kids are just demons. They're absolute demons. So Mari's like, this is my chance. And she also wants to discover who her family is because she was left at an orphanage. And so she has a couple of clues, and so this is her journey to discover, who her people are. I felt like the romantic element was a little bit lacking in here. I wanted some more romance between Edgar and Mari, and I also felt like since Edgar was very wary about his position of power in relation to Mari, he was hesitant to take up any of her offers. So Mari was the one making advances toward Edgar, and he was the one pushing her away, saying like, this isn't right, And it made me feel really sorry for Mari, and also a tad bit embarrassed by the way that she kept throwing herself at him. And I needed more reciprocation. Like, I understood why he was holding himself back, but I was also just like, this is a romance book. You have to throw in the towel at some point and just be like, I'm pursuing her come what may. And that's, yeah. But I am going to give this book 4 stars. And then finally, as a part of the reading vlog, was the Rayquel of Roth. I listened to this on audio. I was not a fan of the narration, and I also think that too much was going on with this book. So the hero and the heroine have been married for the past 3 years, and we actually see them get married, or we hear of them getting married at the end of The Beast of Beswick. Isabel looks at her new husband, Winter, as like this knight in shining armor who's rescuing her because there was this awful Earl trying to marry her who's like too old for her, and he's an awful man. And Winter steps up to the plate. His motivation is that he needs to get married because his father, the Duke, won't let him have access to his trust fund if he doesn't get married until he's 30. So that would be like 10 years, and he wants to do stuff. He wants to open a club and everything. So he wants access to that money, and then he sees this woman in need. She's very beautiful, and he can't resist. But funnily enough, when they get married on their wedding night to consummate the marriage, there are feelings. There's a lot of feelings, and she does not react in a way that he expects. He expects for her to not even want anything to do with him after this wedding night, and she very much enjoys herself, and he was not expecting to enjoy himself as well. And so instead of risking falling for her, he decides to leave her at his country estate with his estranged father, because he does not like his father at all, and return to London, and they haven't seen each other for 3 years. So where the story picks up after this little like prologue she wants to have a relationship with her husband. She wants kids, so she decides that she's going to have to pursue him. Again, he's pushing her away a lot. And it was just, I needed a little bit more balance. I needed a little bit more balance with the romance, with the feelings, because I felt like all the conflicts come to a head at the very end. There was just a lot going on, lots of like secret identity stuff, lots of secrets, which some of them could have been solved with one little conversation. And I don't really like that. I don't like the kind of like, I've had this assumption for decades and it could have been corrected, but I just didn't let that other person explain it to me because I was being stubborn. So I'm going to give this book 3 stars. So this is the lowest rating of my historical vlog that I did. Next, I reread Wolf Gone Wild, but this time in audio because Juliet, in case you guys didn't know, Juliet Cross is my aunt. She's also the co-host for my podcast. She signed a deal with Podium and they're going to be doing the audio for the entire Stay a Spell series, and they're currently like working on Don't Hex and Drive, and then they'll be doing the 3rd book, which the 3rd book's not released yet. So Aiden Snow and Joanna Fairview did the narration for this book. So Joanna did Evie and Aiden Snow, oh my god, let me tell you, did Mateo. Mateo's character, he's a werewolf, but a hex has been put on him, so he cannot turn into a werewolf once a month, and it is causing his wolf inside of him to like come out to the forefront, and he can now hear his wolf in like everyday life. And his wolf calls himself Alpha. And Alpha, when Aiden Snow was doing Alpha's like lines and voices, I was laughing out loud because Alpha is like a primitive being. Like he just wants to fight and like fuck. And he's just like, he's crazy. And Mateo's just like, oh my god, I cannot listen to this dude in my head anymore. And he seeks out the witches of New Orleans. The Savoy sisters control all like the supernaturals in New Orleans. And Evie is a renowned hexbreaker. So he asks for help. But the thing is, witches really don't interact with werewolves because they're very dangerous. They're volatile. And so this is like kind of like a special request, a special favor, and Evie decides to help him. So I'm just saying the audiobook was phenomenal. I cannot wait to see what Aiden Snow does for Don't Hex and Drive. Like, I'm so excited, so excited. Aiden Snow's voice, so deep. It gets me, and it was so funny. I loved it. 5 stars. Next, I read The Rivalry by Nikki Sloan, and this is a new adult college romance. And this is kind of like enemies to lovers because our heroine Kayla, she is a cheerleader for Ohio. And oh my god, I'm gonna forget his team. Jay plays for the Wolverines. And they actually meet at a friend's wedding. And her friend who's getting married forbids her from talking about football because she gets a little crazy. And I kind of really liked her character, Kayla, as a woman, being so obsessed with football. Like, she knows stats. She's been born and raised in this fanatical house. And so she is a cheerleader, but like she knows more about football than like anybody. So she connects with this guy who's also a groomsman. He's not saying that he is a football player because he doesn't want his like fame to like influence this pretty girl that he's having a really good conversation with. And I love how when they find out, she is so put off. She's like, we can't do this. You're literally from our rival school. And my parents would flip out because her parents are fanatics when it comes to their football team. But I really kind of like how Jay's just kind of like, it's just a stupid rivalry. Like, we have a connection. And she struggled a lot with it, and I didn't mind her struggle. I really didn't. There was a couple times where I was very frustrated. I'm like, you gotta let the rivalry go. You gotta let it go. And we all know that she's eventually going to. So she does hold on to that rivalry a long time, but I still really enjoyed the book. Like, I thought it was really good. I ended up by giving this 4 stars. Next, I read After Midnight by Teresa Medeiros for the Rake Appreciation Society pick for May. And this was unexpected. I've never read a Teresa Medeiros before. Let me show you the step back because it's like very like cool and like spooky kind of. But I was pleasantly surprised. I actually binged this the night before. Jen and Crystal did their live review. It was everything that I needed to read in a historical / paranormal romance. It was really good. It was funny and I love the characters. So Caroline, she's the oldest of 3 girls and they were orphaned. So her cousin has now taken over the title and they've been relegated to this, you know, dingy little cottage, which soon they're going to be kicked out of. And their only hope is really her next youngest sister, Vivian, making a match. So she was taken under the wing of her aunt in London, and Vivian was given a season. And she even like used like the dresses and stuff that Caroline was supposed to use before her parents died. So Caroline has never gotten a season. She's been trying to be very money conscious to take care of her siblings. The youngest sister, Portia, she's a little bit dramatic. They get a letter from their sister, Vivian. And Portia's freaking out because she's like, Vivian's like almost about to marry this guy and he's rumored to be a vampire. We can't let her marry a vampire. And of course, Caroline was just like, that's nonsense. You've been reading too many books. Like, ugh, he's not a vampire. And look, he invited us to come meet him, so we're going to get there. And she's like, isn't it suspicious that this is going to be a midnight dinner? When Caroline goes to London to meet Adrian, she gets to this midnight party and Vivian goes and walks off. And there's this man and he's giving this reading. And he's reading, I forgot what it was, by Byron, I believe, about vampires. And so she's like, oh, of course, this is Adrian. And he's playing into all of the assumed stories about him, and he looks a little vampish. So this guy, she's trying not to giggle, and this guy comes up to her and gives her a handkerchief, and he's like, ladies are often moved to tears by his performance or whatever. And she's like, no, I'm like actually trying not to laugh because it's a little bit ridiculous, and didn't you know that the rumors were that he was a vampire and whatever. And then she finds out that the guy she's talking to is actually Adrian. So it's a with the wrong sibling type of romance, because Adrian has been courting Vivian. There's more that goes into the story than just that, but I loved Caroline and Adrian's banter. I love their connection. I thought that they had a lot of chemistry together, and a lot of the book is Caroline gets a little suspicious as well. Some things start happening, like this constable shows up at the dinner saying like there's been another disappearance, and he's basically accusing Adrian. Adrian's like, you have no proof. And so Caroline, of course, is like, well, I can't let my sister marry somebody who might be a vampire. For a lot of the book, it's like, is he a vampire or isn't he? Is she being ridiculous or is there something supernatural going on? I enjoyed it very much, and I loved speculating about what was going to happen. I kept messaging Jen. I was like, I think this is going to happen. I think that he's this, and I think that this person's this. And it was a lot of fun. So I gave this book 4.5 stars. I liked it, and I want to read the next book in the series. Next, I read The Holdout by Mickey Miller. This was one of my spinner roll picks for a book that I already own. I'm pretty sure that this was a BookBub book, so it was technically free. From the very first chapter of this book, I knew that this book was not going to go well, but I did not want to DNF it because of it was a spinner wheel pick, and I felt bad because these are supposed to be books that I like can't escape. Like, I have to read them. So I probably would have DNF'd it if it was not picked for me randomly for my May TBR. Because the first thing that we get is Emma. She works at a hot dog stand. She has graduated college with like a degree in psychology, but she doesn't know what she really wants to do. So she's working at a hot dog joint, and this customer comes in and is just like, hey guys, because she's like bantering with her friend. Can I order? Y'all are just standing here and like, hello, customer here. And so whenever he places his order for 3 hot dogs, I hated this interaction because she was like, are you sure you want to order 3 hot dogs? And he was just like, why are you making a comment on my order? I can eat 3 hot dogs if I want. Like, I'm a big dude. I'm like 6'5". Like, let me eat my hot dogs. And I was just like, that would never happen. If somebody told me, like commented on my order, I'm just saying. So she turned me off right there because I was like, why the fuck are you commenting on his hot dog order? Let the man eat. But it was a forced situation because the author wanted them to argue. The author wanted them to argue, and she told him about himself because he was saying some rude things back. And I was just like, I don't like either of these characters. Both of these characters are assholes. I don't like them. And then the situation gets so contrived because he kind of called her out being like, well, look at you. You're working at a hot dog joint. And so she's like, yeah, I probably should start sending out my resume, looking for a better job, like more into my field. So she goes to a couple job interviews. She gets into an elevator, and she's daydreaming, so she doesn't press a button, and the elevator automatically goes all the way up to the top or whatever. The door is open on this floor that's like, it's very expensive looking furnishings, and instead of like pressing the button to go down, she gets out. And I'm just like, I would never. She meets these two random guys and they're like, oh my God, this is the girl from the viral video because her friend filmed the argument and he's a famous football player. We're the owners of the team and we'd like to talk to you. What are you doing here? And I was like, this conversation would never happen. It was just so weird. Long story short, she becomes his personal assistant, Everett, the guy that she argued with in the hot dog joint, becomes his personal assistant, but she's also being paid a lot of money and she needs it to help her sister out by the team owners to spy on him. Tell us if he's struggling with stuff, like let us know, like something's going on, fishy, whatever. So it's a romance between them. I didn't understand the romance. The conflict was, you could see it coming from a mile away and there was just a lot going on. I like certain parts of the book, but it was definitely not enough for me to love it at all. So it's a 3-star for me, possibly like a 2.75 star, but obviously rounding up. I just did not enjoy this book at all. Next, I reread Devil's Bride for the podcast. This is the first book in Stephanie Lauren's Sinster series. I really like the back of this book. It doesn't have a step back, but it has the picture on the back. Hello. Thank you. Oh my God, I love it. So, Devil's Bride. One of the things that I love about the Sinster series is that in almost every book, when the hero meets the heroine, he immediately knows that she's the one for him. And often in historical romances, we read about rakes and rogues, and Devil is definitely, a rogue, who shun the idea of marriage because they're just like, I don't want to be tied down. Devil's the complete opposite. He's like, he sees Honoria and is like, this is my future wife. Easy peasy. You're a perfect duchess. Like, yeah. And you may have some plans because she's like, oh no, I want to be independent and I don't ever plan on married. I'm 24. I'm almost like super firmly on the shelf. So I plan on traveling the world alone. And no, I don't want to be a duchess. But the funny thing is, she's saying she doesn't want to be a duchess, but at the same time, circumstances, which I'll circle back to that, puts her in a position where she's behaving like the duchess. She's enveloped into his Sinster family. They're all extremely close to one another, and she takes on these roles that the duchess would perform, and she does it beautifully. Honoria always says that she doesn't like to be idle. Well, a position as duchess would never be boring. And I just like that fact that she slowly slips into the role that Devil's like, you're perfect for, and she's like, oh no, I'm not. She is. There's also a murder mystery. Storm comes in. She decides to take a shortcut through the woods and she discovers this man who has been shot and he's dying. And then that's when she and Devil's Sinster meet. And she has no idea that he's the Duke and that the man that was shot, this young man, this is his cousin, Tolly. Those scenes, those harrowing scenes, like when Devil recognizes that it's Tolly and Honoria has no idea that they're related. Rereading those scenes like kind of hit hard for me because I'm just like, oh, so sad, he's so young. So they're trying to figure out who murdered Tolly, why did they murder him, and I loved it. It was amazing. 5-star read. 3 more books, guys. 3 more books. Next, I read The Heir by Sophie Lark. This is the spin-off series from her Brutal Birthright series, and it's Mafia. But this time it's like the next gen. From all the characters that we meet in Brutal Birthright, this is their children. Leo Gallo and Anna Wilkes, they're best friends, and they're both children of people that we read about in the Brutal Birthright series. They've been accepted to this college that is specific to mafia children, okay, specific to them, and they have to go, it's in like Croatia, and they have to go on this like island near Croatia. They can't go home. It's like brutal over there. It's like an eye for an eye. Like if you hurt somebody, you're gonna get hurt back, and if you kill somebody, it's like death for death type of situation. Leo is like a happy-go-lucky type of guy. He's definitely competitive. He plays basketball just like his father did. And he has a brutal streak, but he's like a charismatic, charming type of person. He like hides his brutalness behind this devil may care smile, oh, nothing really bothers me type of attitude. And his best friend, Anna, she is the daughter of Mikolaj and Nessa, and I freaking love their story. It's one of my favorites. She is going to the Kingmaker School, and she's going to be under the designation of heir because her father says, you're going to be my heir. And she's like, well, what about my younger brother? And he was like, I'm not going by gender. you can handle this. You can be the heir to the Polish mafia that I control in Chicago. And she's like, I want it. Definitely, I want it. So she has more of a badass reputation than Leo does. And I love how they grew up together. They're best friends. They've always like looked at each other as friends, but friends to lovers romances. I love it. I love when we get past that hill of like, is this more? You know me so well, but then we're developing feelings, and it's like nobody wants to be the first to admit that I have feelings for my best friend, because what if they don't feel the same way? What if they look at me like a brother figure or look at me like a sister figure? And it just, the situation is so good. They get to the Kingmaker School, and there's also a third character. We get a third point of view in this book, and I will admit I don't like multiple points of views beyond the hero and the heroine, but some things happen in this book, and I'm really glad that there was a third point of view. Dean Yenin is actually Leo's cousin, but their family does not get along because of history, stuff that happens in the Brutal Birthright series. They rehash it pretty well, so you don't have to read the Brutal Birthright series if you don't want to, but I felt for Dean. He does some things, and he's going to be like a villainous character, but he's painted in a sympathetic way. Like, I love the way that Sophie Lark did it, because he does some things that are horrible, but in the context of mafia, it's like those things are expected, so it's easier to forgive. But the one problem that I had with this book, and the thing that really tipped it over the edge for me to give it 4 stars and nothing above 4 stars, is that, like I said, Anna's supposed to be this badass character. She's supposed to like take no shit, be even more like ruthless than Leo. And I feel like there's a situation that happens once they get to the school, and all of a sudden Anna becomes a different character, a weak character. There's lots of like scenes with like misunderstandings and stuff that I didn't love, but I still like the characters. I still like the setup, and I like some of the situations that they were put in. So I did still give it a 4 stars because I like Sophie Lark. I'm really excited for The Rebel. The Rebel was teased, and I can't wait because this is going to be Miles, a cousin. Funnily enough, he's a cousin to both Leo and Anna because, yeah, marriage ties. Oh, Leo. Leo had some great moments in this book. So again, 4 stars. All right, in these next 2 books I squeezed in yesterday and last night. I could not sleep last night, so I was able to squeeze in yet another book. But I was listening to The Hellion Bride on audio yesterday. Jen and I were buddy reading because she introduced me to Catherine Coulter. We read The Sharebook Bride last month. I really liked that one, like a lot. And even though it had like some problematic content, it was still like I enjoyed the story a lot. The Hellion Bride is the younger brother of the hero from the first one, Ryder. And since his older brother Douglas was married in the first book, he was unable to travel to Jamaica to look in on their plantation. Also, trigger warning, because there is mentions of plantations and slavery and not great things happening in here. I will say there was like a lot more problematic things happening that are you kind of expect to run into when you're reading old school historical romance. So I wasn't surprised by it, but it was still jarring, and it wasn't enjoyable to read about that aspect of it at all. And there was also like not great voodoo representation. Of course, it was like represented as like this barbaric kind of evil religion. So again, not great. There's a lot of not great things happening in here. The heroine, Sophie, is my favorite thing about this book, but I still had some issues with her as well. I gave this book 3 stars, and it's like barely into the 3-star range. Catherine Coulter does write a really compelling story about characters, but I felt like there was a lot going on with this book. The whole reason why Ryder is going to Jamaica is because there's some strange mystical things going on that he has to check out under the guardianship of her uncle, and her uncle basically kind of whores her out to men. So she has a reputation of having like 3 lovers on the island. So Ryder's intrigued by like what woman would be able to juggle 3 men, and I have to meet this woman. And her uncle is encouraging Sophie to seduce Ryder for his own purposes. The thing is, Sophie is completely unwilling to do any of this. And the only reason why she's been going along with what her uncle wants her to do, it's a very complicated situation, is because she has a younger brother, Jeremy. He's 9 years old, and her uncle threatens Jeremy to get Sophie to comply. I felt so badly for her. And Ryder makes some not great choices when it comes to Sophie. He was extremely frustrating. I hated the way that he treated Sophie in a lot of scenes. But then he had some scenes where he was taking care of her, and I was like, oh, why can't you just be this guy all the time? So he was an arrogant asshole and very high-handed, and Sophie kind of deserves better. Sophie had some badass moments in this book, but then she also had some weak character moments in this book. So it was just a very mixed bag, very mixed bag. So definitely the Sherbrooke Bride was a lot better than the Hellion Bride. And finally, I read We Were Once by S.L. Scott. This is another spinner wheel pick for my KU read and the first book that I read by S.L. Scott. This is a new adult romance, and I would say that the format of this novel is very reminiscent of Nicholas Sparks' plot lines. I don't know if I've ever gone on record, just because I never have. I've never read a Nicholas Sparks book, but I've watched the adaptations, and he has a formula. Young new adult scenes where like there's young love, and then most of them are like wrong side of the tracks situations, and then they're separated and then they reconnect as adults. And that's the formula for this book. It's very Nicholas Sparksy. Except with an HEA, nobody dies at the end, okay? They end up together, nobody dies. But it's still like tragic. But still, tragedy has to happen before they're able to get together around the midway point. When we meet Chloe Fox, she is going to school. She's pre-med, and she plans on becoming a doctor. Her father is a very renowned neurosurgeon who's also extremely wealthy, and he expects her to follow in his footsteps. And she hasn't had much of a life. Like, her whole life has been studying. She even graduated high school early to start college early. Her mom is divorcing her dad and kind of encouraging her, like, hey, I'm so proud of you, but also there's more to life than just studying. Like, I kind of want you to experience some things. Her mom orders her food to get delivered to her apartment, and she opens the door not expecting food because her mom didn't tell her. There's this hot guy delivering food, and they have a really interesting interplay, and she has this bonsai tree Frankie, and he knows about bonsai, so they kind of strike up a conversation. And she goes to the diner where he works the next day because he left his name tag. She and Josh, you can tell like the chemistry. I really like this couple together. I really did. The only problem is I loved all the scenes when they were younger. This first love, this new love. Josh coming from, a middle-class background. His mom owns the diner, works her ass off. She had a bad reputation whenever she was younger, and so he has to like work hard to earn his spot at Yale. They both go to Yale. And their relationship does progress pretty fast, hot and heavy. Young love and all that. But then like the tragedy happens, and it's a little bit over the top. It's a little bit over the top. And then also the circumstances which brings them back together. It was just a little bit too much. I definitely enjoyed the first half of the book way more than the second half of the book. And I just could have done without the conflict and the resolution. Like, I wish it played out a different way that didn't involve a Nicholas Sparks plot twist. So I'm going to give this book 4 stars. But I'm interested to see what else S.L. Scott has to offer. I don't know if all of her books are going to be formulaic like this. If they are, I'll find out, and I probably won't read too much more of S.L. Scott if that does seem to be the case, but I'm willing to go back into the backlist and see what else she has, what other kind of stories she has to tell. So that concludes the wrap up for the second week of May. I've read a lot of books. Audiobooks really helped me read a lot. Also, I tried to film the doing questions and makeup video, and that video was going to be so long, so I have to redo that one. I tried to do that yesterday, so hopefully I can get that filmed tomorrow and then have that up sometime this week. Alright guys, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified of any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with little HEA. Bye guys!